Welcome, everybody. Tammy, welcome to the showroom.
Thank you.
This is the showroom for Convo by Design. It is an interactive, in-depth conversation with amazing creatives where we tell you a little bit about how they got where they are. We do a little deep dive into some of their incredible design. And thank you for joining us. This is somewhat interactive. So as Erika mentioned, there is the chat feature down at the bottom. If you do have any questions along the way, please just sort of type them in. And Erika is my co-pilot on this journey and loves jumping in, and I love when she does it. So she will jump in with the questions that you're asking as we're talking. So Tammy, welcome to the showroom. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm excited to talk to you. I love your work. What I'd like to do is just start with a sort of tell me how you got here. Tell me how you started your firm. Tell me why. Your work, and we're going to get into the work in a minute, and it says so much about you and your backstory. So sort of set the table for us, if you will.
Okay. So I was the kid that, rearranged her room. There were only two ways to do it, and I think I did it probably every 2 months, just for something new and trying, and wanted the design sort of kit for Christmas, and and then it was time to go to college, and I actually started in engineering, and quickly within the first year thought, I don't want to design bridges. That's not pretty enough. It's interesting, but backed out in it, and I wanted to do interior design, but I was at Wake Forest, and Wake Forest has studio art and art history. So I started taking studio art and art history classes, and there is a girls' college, Salem College, in Winston-Salem, and the art department let me go over and fill up electives with design classes. So it was not the most traditional route, but I did that. And then after that, I went and got a design degree in Atlanta and worked for a firm, Gandy Peace. Bill Peace still has Peace Designs, and got just some really, really great experience. And shortly after that, moved to Charleston, worked for about a year, and naively decided at the age of about 25 that I could do this, which I don't recommend. So it was the school of hard knocks, but I got a lot of amazing breaks along the way, and there was a lot of hard work. One was the Swordgate House in Charleston, which is a 20,000 square foot house. It's a significant preserved house here, and I had worked on that for a couple years, and that just sort of opened the door, and it was like drinking through a fire hose, and sort of sink or swim, and I just paddled my heart out. So that's how it started. Yeah, and interesting and different way, not the conventional way where you work under a designer for a long time and learn what to do and what not to do. I sort of learned things the hard way along the way, but it had its advantages as well.
It's really interesting to me because in talking to so many designers and so many incredible designers like yourself, there isn't any one way to do it. But what I found is that there really are two that are most prevalent. The first is you do the traditional route where you find a designer, you work under them, under their tutelage, and you kind of learn the way. And then when you get too big for the cage, then you fly out on your own. And the other route is to say, you know what, I'm just going to go do this. And then there are hybrids along the way, or variations. And I think yours says a lot. I love doing this because, it's so interesting. Prior to March 13th of 2020, after 7 years of doing the podcast, the number of live interviews that I had done, you could count on one hand. But now, since then, it's been all virtual. And I consider it a blessing. I really do, because it has given me an opportunity to speak with people like you. And I don't say that lightly. You're in South Carolina.
Right.
I think, and you have an office in Alabama,
Right.
in Birmingham.
Hmm.
I the number of designers that I've spoken with, or the conversation of design, in the Atlanta, South Carolina, in the South,
Hmm.
is few and far between. I don't think the conversation really takes place enough. I wanted to ask you about the storytelling and the
Yeah.
story that you're telling about the South, about traditional design, traditional Southern ideas imbued into your design, the work, your inspiration, because your inspiration that you get from the South and your background is all part of what makes this tableau that you've created so unique.
Right. Well, I think a big part of our work is lifestyle, and what lifestyle the client wants to have in their home. And just being from the South, I think that that sort of gets incorporated a little bit into our work. Even, we've got a project in Philadelphia right now. We have one in Connecticut. We do work sort of up and down the East Coast. But I think, just the hospitality, the indoor outdoor living aspect of it. Um, are you still there? I think we lost him, Leah. You are still there?
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I had to pop up on my computer. So I think that just that lifestyle where it's a little bit more relaxed and casual, yet can be formal. It's sort of the yin and yang, I think, that the South has, especially Charleston. Charleston, I say, has sort of a grit and grace combo to it, which I love. I mean, you literally, when the tide goes out here, we have something called pluff mud, and it's what's not sand, it's literally like mucky dark brown, and it smells like sulfur. And um we moved back to Charleston about 4 years ago, and my children were like, "Oh my God, that's disgusting. What is that smell?" And I said, "I'm going to give you a year or two, and you're going to all of a sudden love it, because it means that you're in Charleston in the Low Country, and you're going to love being here." So, it's got sort of that yin and yang to it. Yet you've got homes and event spaces that were built in the 18th century and are grand with beautiful plaster detailing. And so you can go from the boat with pluff mud all around you in the day to a formal ball with about as beautiful of a space that we have to offer in this country. So there's just something about that combo that really is magnetic for me. And I try and bring that sort of feel into my interiors. And we get a lot, and I love when we hear this feedback is, you can tell that a lot of thought went into it. There's a lot of detailing. You can tell that you're in the presence of high quality and fine things, but you feel comfortable and it's inviting, and you can take off your shoes and, sort of, for it to unfold and for you to enjoy it as you're in the space, and it's not intimidating. So I do think that there is a parallel to that with, where I live on a daily basis.
So, sort of picking up on the pluff mud, I've never said those two words together. And
Uh-huh.
so I love that. I love that idea. And what it reminds me of, and I wanted to ask you about this, is in in that storytelling, in that feel, in that, articulation of the South. Talk to me about indigenous materials. Talk to me about
Yeah.
how where you are allows you to incorporate the materials where you are, stone, um, all of those materials that you're working
Hmm.
into your design, and how that affects your story or your
Yeah.
storytelling.
Um, well, I would say just in general, natural materials. We use many more natural materials than synthetics. And a lot of that for me is we also use a lot more texture, I would say, than pattern. And it's just the texture of those natural materials and how they come naturally. So, linen, stone, I mean, even some steel with the windows. I mean, cottons, hemps, breathable fabrics, but that are woven in a very heavily textured way. Stone's great here because it's hot, really hot in the summer. So we like to use, a lot of stone and slabs, but again, any kind of natural texture that we can get out of a natural material definitely appeals to us.
Is there are there any local quarries, any natural stone that you source locally in particular?
Not really in South Carolina. In Georgia, there is. It's white marble in Georgia. We get crab orchard out of Tennessee, which is like a flagstone. So nearby, but South Carolina is very, at least where we are, is very sandy. I mean, we're basically underwater here. Charleston, parts of it are below sea level, which is why when it's a high tide and a full moon, the downtown floods. We become Venice a few times a year.
Oh, is that right?
It is. It is. It's unbelievable. And throw a hurricane in, and we're in trouble.
Just out of curiosity, it's a weird question, but I'm curious. Being in Southern California, where so much has gone into designing for earthquakes, fires, floods, anywhere you are in the world now, just like after the pandemic in 1918, where there were certain things that came into certain elements of design that really changed the manner in which design was crafted and implemented. I'm curious how those conditions affect the way that you design. Does it affect the aesthetic? Does it affect how you put things together? Does it affect the materials you use? Do you design for that? It's almost that designing for disaster idea. Do you incorporate that into your work, and how?
That's really more on the architectural end. And when we work with the architect, we work very carefully with our builders and architects and landscape architects and clients in a collaborative team-like way from the very beginning of the project. But we're working on a project right now, for example, on Kiowa Island, and it's poured concrete. So, and there's pilings that go 70 feet down into the ground, like dozens and dozens of pilings. So, I mean, it wouldn't be funny, but if a hurricane came, I mean, that house would be in the ocean and standing. So, yes, we do. And, there's codes here now that if you're renovating a house and you put in more than half of the value of the house into the renovation, you have to raise it up to FEMA's flood standards. So what's happening here in downtown Charleston, and I think we'll see that continuing to happen, is houses downtown are now being elevated about 10, 12 feet off of the ground, which we'll see how it goes. But I think we're going to have a few decades where it's a little bit dicey down there, where we have sort of some ups and downs. But we, not this past fall, but the 3 previous falls had hurricane scares and big floods. And so there were many houses downtown that their basement, which is, when I say basement, we don't really have basements, and gardens were completely flooded, and a lot of the HVAC systems and everything are down there. So for 3 years in a row, these homeowners were replacing their entire HVAC units and their garden. So after 3 years of that, they're like, forget it, let's either move to higher ground or raise the house. So we're starting to see that happen a lot here. And if it's new construction, then it automatically has to meet that code, depending on what flood zone you're in.
Well, I think you bring up a really interesting point, because one of the things that you first said when we were talking about, your design style is to really use the outdoor presence to bring indoors and have that inside-outside design. And I got to imagine that this creates an incredible challenge for you. That being said, how do you approach outdoor hardscapes, outdoor kitchens, pools, usable space? How do you approach that?
Well, two thoughts come to mind. One of the nice things about the historic homes in Charleston, which we do a lot of work on, is the piazzas, which are what we call the side porch. And they were normally or originally built because when these houses were built, there was no air conditioning. And so it allowed for the breeze to come off of the water. So a lot of these houses have double piazzas on them, which become outdoor living spaces, and then screen doors that go into the indoor living spaces. So you can open that up and you automatically have an indoor outdoor connection. But we do a lot of, outdoor living rooms, areas where it's outdoor kitchens. And it's just about the flow, and incorporating it as if it's another room in the house, but having access to it. So we'll use a door called a nano door, and there'll be sliding doors that bifold on top of each other. And so when they're closed, it's all windows. And when they're open, you have an entire wall that opens out to, say, a porch. And then the porch could also have motorized screens. So it could be a completely open air porch, but we also often will recess motorized screens in the headers of the porch. So you flip a switch and all of a sudden you've got a screen porch that's open to your den, and the den becomes an indoor outdoor screen room. So a lot of flexibility with that. And then from an aesthetic standpoint, I would say one thing that's really important to us in our work and when we're working with the client is if we have a project and a site where the client's there for the location. So say it's a beach house or a mountain house or, something with a view, we oftentimes will incorporate the natural color scheme of that setting into the interior so that you've got sort of that fluid blend and your eye doesn't jump from one thing to the next. I've found that it really allows that exterior view to be incorporated into the interior, and it feels a little bit more seamless. And that's usually, why the client is in that location to begin with. So we try and embrace that with the interior scheme.
Love that. And with that, I think this is a really good time to one of the things that I absolutely love about doing this is we've asked you for images. And in the past, hosting a podcast, images has always been kind of like the kiss of death, but because it's very hard to tell a visual story in an audio format. But I think we've solved for that over the years, and I'm excited about this. And by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, and I'm saying this while everyone's watching, because this will be a podcast episode on Convo by Design, we'll publish it to that. And if you are listening to the podcast, we will have links in the show notes for you to go and look at the images that we're talking about. So then we can sort of, you can follow along in real time. With that, we're going to start showing some of your work, and we're going to walk through it, and you're going to walk us through it if you would. We're going to start with this Atlanta estate.
Okay.
So where is this, and when was this project completed?
So this is a home that's in Buckhead area of Atlanta, and we did this project. This is a Philip Schutze house, who is a significant classical architect in Atlanta in the early 1900s. And we did a full renovation and addition on this house with Stan Dixon Architects out of Atlanta. This was probably completed around 5 years ago. So it's a neat house. It's for a family with 3 daughters and lots of dogs, and they are both of the wife is Italian and the husband is Greek, and they came with a lot of family pieces, which was really fun. Some really great, unusual things that we were able to incorporate into the house. So this is her office. This is a Benison fabric, and it's upholstered walls and really quiet. And so one side of this room is where you can see out to the driveway, and then the other side is there's a hall with glass doors, and beyond the hall, it's like a gallery hall with glass doors looking out to the pool. So she has a vantage point and sort of a, a cockpit view of what's going on around the house with three little kids.
In addition, hey, Erika, could you do me a favor and go back to that one slide for just a moment? One of the things that I think you did beautifully, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but with padded walls in this environment with an office, we've only learned over the last 10, 11 months how important having a nice, quiet place to work is. That element of the padded walls under fabric also serves, in addition to it being absolutely beautiful and textural, like you had mentioned at the start of this, you also get that added benefit of noise baffling. Was that an intentional
Definitely
idea?
And we do that a lot, actually, Josh. We do it in bedrooms a lot. The master bedroom in this house has got the walls are upholstered as well. I don't know if we'll have that slide, but in bedrooms, it's so nice. It just really quiets. It feels like you're in a cocoon.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, Erika, moving on. I see this. Okay, is this fun for you? First of all, having, looking at this wall and seeing all the pictures, I view this as like putting together a giant puzzle, and I'm curious if you enjoy the process. And then the next thing I wanted to move to is that floor. It is absolutely stunning, and I wanted to ask you about that as well.
So the gallery wall, this has a story to it. A lot of this house has a story to it. So these are drawings from the 17th century from Italian masters. And her mother had a collection, and it was beautiful. And they were framed, there were about 8 to 10 framed together, matted together in very large frames. And they had a house, a villa in Italy, and we actually went over there, and I was sort of given full access to whatever we wanted to bring back, which was amazing. But the scale didn't translate as well, because this is a villa that has 25-foot ceilings in it, and talk about stone, all marble. And so some of the things we had to adjust a little bit. So this was one of them. I fell in love with these. So we took them out of their beautiful large frames, which was a little bit painful, but we did it. And we individually framed every one of these. So each one of them, the frame was selected. A lot of them have custom fabric mats on them. Every one of these pieces was designed individually on how they were going to be framed. Then what we did is we created a brown paper, like a craft paper template of the wall. So we hung a big craft paper template. We marked where the stairs came down, where the windows were, and we laid, because this goes all the way around the second floor as well. So then we laid one half in the living room and the other half in the dining room, and then just started the puzzle pieces of the pieces of art and how they would all go together. And it took probably all day. I mean, it was a long process. And then we drew on we numbered the piece, we numbered the outline of it on the paper, we hung the paper back up, we hung the pieces on top of the paper, exactly where we had them. And then once all the pieces were hung on the paper, we slowly ripped from behind the pieces. So it was a 2-day process. And in hindsight, it was fun. While I was doing it, it was a nightmare. But I think it was worth it. On the floor, that floor actually was a pattern that Shutzi had originally designed for this entry hall. And Stan, the architect, went to the Atlanta History Center and found the original drawings, but it had never been executed. It was just a wood floor, just a hardwood floor. And when he found that, we thought, well, we have to do this now. It's so beautiful. And so we picked a few stones. Please don't ask me which ones they were. I cannot remember. But
Okay.
2 tones of gray and then white marble. And we put it in. So we put in what his original design was for that house.
Beautifully done.
Thank you.
So to me, this is sort of I see the quintessential Southern charm,
Hmm.
right? I mean, and again, I pick up on the pictures because there's such art and artistry to put to hanging pictures, and these are obviously meaningful. And in another home, there might be a TV above the mantle, but not in this
Hmm.
one.
Hmm. So this room has a big story too. Her mother, our client's mother, in sort of the second half of her life became they were always been a big dog family, but she started to raise Scotty dogs and show Scotty dogs. So a lot of our clients sort of adolescence was going to dog shows, which she's got some really funny stories about. And so the piece above the mantle is actually a piece by a modern artist, Banksy. And I don't know if you know anything about Banksy, but he is an anonymous artist. And he's done, if you all don't know Banksy, look him up. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing. His pieces go for a lot now. I think part of it is because he's just unknown and he's been able to stay anonymous. But that piece is like a Renaissance painting of a woman in her, form of boudoir, which is how her mother's life started for her first half. And there's a pop-up, like you would see an old pop-up on a computer screen message in the center of that painting, and it says, "A system error has occurred." And so that painting really spoke to our client. She's like, "We have to do something with this painting." And I was like, "This is so much a part of your story. Like, it's too small for over the mantle, but it has so much emotional weight and importance to it. We're hanging it there anyway." And then what we proceeded to do is hang dog pictures and portraits. We plastered the room in dog pictures and portraits. So you literally have, like, you can't see it in this picture, but behind the green hydrangeas where that white matted frame is, that's a Picasso of a dog. And then right next to it, you have a $150 mutt that we literally found like in a market. And we were just like, forget it. I mean, anything goes. We're just doing it. And again, I think that brings up that yin yang thing that I love so much. It's that tug and pull where you've got something really formal, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, that makes it interesting and a story and inviting and not intimidating.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we find our way into the heart of the home,
Hmm.
and it's really interesting. You've taken some modern, you've taken some traditional,
Hmm.
you've added something amazing to the floor.
Hmm.
Um, there's so much to see here.
Hmm.
The backsplash is stunning. Take me through this.
So again, I think this is an example of using some natural materials that maybe normally you wouldn't automatically think would go together. With this old pine center table that sort of anchors the space. And then you've got the marble slabs that are the full backsplash, the integrated marble sink. There's another sink that is just to the right of this frame that is a silver sink. The sink is made of silver and it's beautiful. And then we've got that leather door, which swings into the dining room. That's the dining room's off to the left. And the pocketed doors of the shutters above the main sink, that looks into the kids sort of den area. And that we added into this space. That was just a solid wall. And we really wanted to make that connection, family connection between the kitchen and the small TV den right there. So we opened that up, which also allowed light to pour into the space and was just ended up being successful. So
Hey, Tammy, can you tell me about your relationship with your fabricator? And, when I look at a kitchen like this and I'm looking at
mhm,
that sink and I'm looking at the backsplash and I'm looking at
mhm,
sort of this cohesive, um, seamless. I mean, we don't have close-ups, right? But
Right.
it looks seamless. It looks like it's supposed to be there. It looks like it's been there forever.
We do a lot of detailed drawings. For example, the height of that sill where the shutters are is just where the backsplash dies into the bottom of the sill. So if that was a window, we would look at that. A lot of times for powder rooms, we'll do, sort of a shaped edge, or we'll add a small shelf in bathrooms. Often, I love this detail, and we may run into one along the way, but where we have a taller backsplash, maybe a 6-inch backsplash, sometimes higher, in a bathroom on a vanity, and then we extend a 3-inch stone shelf and then bracket it down to the countertop, and it's just comes in really, really handy for all those little things that you want to have out. But we work really closely with our fabricators with drawings and making sure that the detailing coordinates with the cabinets and or any window packages or doors that we have that are adjacent, and how those interactions work together. It's definitely important, and it's something that you don't really notice unless it's wrong, and then it's just glaring. So
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so again, you found a way to incorporate a story into these two spaces. And it's, as I look at this, I'll be honest with you and tell you that I have a hard time figuring out what was there originally versus what you came in and you put together. Was that the one that we're looking at? I mean, was that originally a bathroom?
No. The bathroom on the left image is her bathroom in the master. And
Okay.
actually that whole second floor was reconfigured. But the piece of furniture came out of the house in Italy. And again, a little bit of angst to cut a hole in that beautiful antique. But I thought, it can sit here and no one will use it, or it can become a part of her life every day. And, it's got family memories attached to it. And so when you think about it like that, it to me is a no-brainer, and it's a thing. So we brought it over, added the marble top and sink to it. And then instead of putting traditional sconces, which you would expect, we wanted it to feel a little bit more furniture-like, a little less utilitarian. And so we use lamps and, put receptacles up high so you don't have the cords, and make it just a very inviting space that, hopefully she feels good in. But all of that is actually new design with old pieces.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I think this goes back to that one issue that we talked about really trusting your fabricators.
Absolutely.
And the amount of angst and how nervous you were. I think, do you have a longstanding relationship with your fabricators? Do you use the same people over and over? Or do you have a few that you go to?
In the South, we have one that we use a lot. But since our projects are everywhere, we really rely on the builders that we work with, which we have been really fortunate to work with some excellent builders. And I can tell from the drawings that come back if if they're up to the standards that we're used to, and just work through the detailing with them. So yes, in the South, but we end up working with a lot of different fabricators because the projects are in different places, and we have to trust, our builders or the architects if they're there. A lot of times the architects aren't where the project is either. We both travel in, but the builder almost always is.
One thing I just wanted to point out, and then we can move on to the next images, is with that bathroom on the left. I really do admire the way that you approached the lighting. So you have the mirror there, which blends obviously with that table, which is now the sink, but you're getting the lighting from the window, so you're getting the reflection into the mirror. And then I don't know if you resisted the urge to do in-wall lighting or overhead lighting, but I imagine that those two lamps, because they're at face height, probably give you perfect side lighting for this environment.
They do. It's just really pretty light. She also has a dressing room that has a makeup vanity spot where she does her makeup if she needs, really good lighting for that. So this is, it's well illuminated, but it's softer light, and we didn't need to have any harsh overhead lighting in here because she was able to have another spot for that.
Yeah, love it. And again, that table, just exquisite. I think that was masterfully done. So speaking of outdoors, okay, wow, that's all I got.
Yeah. I know. Welcome to the South. This is what we get.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why, we get big houses and a lot of outdoor space. I know. So it's pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different areas. There's a table under that arbor. That arbor is now fully grown in, and there's jasmine, all over it. We've got a candle lantern hanging down, so they have dinners out there. The space, the wing to the left is the pool house, which you probably have an image of. It's an interesting space. So yeah, everything sort of embraces that indoor outdoor connection, and it allows for a lot of great light inside the house, which we love.
Yeah, and I love the windows. And again, just we can move on, but just noticing the dogs carried from the inside out.
Dogs everywhere.
Love it. So
this is the New York apartment.
Yeah, from the south to a urban environment.
Yes.
This is Central Park, New York City. How does your design thinking change when you go from one location like the South in Atlanta to a high rise in New York City?
We start with the architecture. Regardless of where it is, we look at the architecture and try and design to the architecture. We don't ever want our interiors to not mesh well with the architecture. And then we look at the setting of where the project is, and then we look at the lifestyle. And honestly, in every project we do, that the lifestyle of the clients and how they're going to use the space and what's going to make it functional for them, and those are the three factors that drive the direction of the design. So, and then we just take what we know about good design and try and squeeze it through the toothpaste tube to create something that works with those three goals in mind.
I just want to mention that, if I'm not mistaken, this project has won the ICAA both Shoots and Stanford White Award. Correct? Yeah, yes. Amazing. And it was also featured in Veranda. Correct.
Yeah.
So love this. This is, this particular kitchen, when I first saw this, it's so livable. It's so comfortable. If you saw this without seeing the window outside, you might think that you were in the South. You would not necessarily think you were in New York City.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we try and like I said, regardless of the location, I love the idea that you walk into our spaces and that a lot of thought and creativity has been poured into it, but that it feels inviting and comfortable and not over the top or unapproachable. Even though we've got this amazing property that we're working on in this amazing spot, the client wanted it to feel like a home for their family. And so I'm glad that it comes off like that.
Tell me about the countertops and backsplash.
So those are Calcutta gold, Italian marble. And we we love it just because it's clean and timeless. And you know, it's funny, we get clients a lot of times saying, well, doesn't it stain or doesn't it? I said, yeah, but if you go to Italy, there's statuary gray literally all over it. And that just becomes, for me, part of the patina. I mean, it's not going to turn, you know, purple on you. It's gonna darken a little bit in spots. And so we use a lot of white marble.
Two questions as it relates to this. The
Mhm.
first is, I would love to know what it's like going and examining slabs with you, what you
Mhm.
look for, how you look at the
Mhm.
veining, sort of the things that you look for. And then the
Mhm.
other part of that is, I would like you sort of elaborate on that opinion a little bit. I think when it comes to marble, you know, in certain situations, you know, you do hear and it's going to stain. You're going to spill red wine on it. It's
Mhm.
going to stain. It's going to get old. You're going to see things. But that patina, um, do you counter design for that so that the design will accentuate the patina as that patina develops over time?
I don't really think about that actively. I just think, you know, some things, to me, I love patina on things, so I just embrace the idea that it may do that. Um, but in terms of what we look for with the marble and slabs, this actually, as I'm looking at it, that is a marble tile in the back, so it's not a solid slab. And if it was a solid slab, typically if it's a solid slab, I will go heavier. I like for the background of the white marble at least to be very clean and crisp and white and not fuzzy or gray. And then some, you know, some stones have that more naturally than others. Like Carrara is much sort of I call it fuzzier. Alabama white, same thing. Statuary and Calcutta, in my experience, you get a stronger vein to and a more white background. And I like the contrast of that. The only time that I pull back from that, it also gives you a little more drama, is when you're using tile, because just imagine if each one of those tiles, you know, you don't get like the consistent pattern of the vein where it's sort of sculptural. You have it with each tile, and so then it becomes really, really busy. So if we're using a marble tile, we'll often use something that's a little bit quieter overall. And if we're using a slab, we'll often use something that's got more of an intense sort of vein to it.
Interesting. Very nice. Okay. So small, I I love small spaces because
Hmm.
I feel like a small space will test a designer like nothing else. And I
Hmm.
love to see what designers can do with a small space. And this is just amazing.
Hmm.
What did you have to work with and how'd you come up with this?
So this is this is back in that Atlanta Shutsy house, and this was an interior powder room. The powder room was basically this shape. I don't think we changed the footprint of it at all. Stan had the idea because there's a small vestibule on the other side of that window. It's not actually the exterior. It is a vestibule to the exterior with glass
Mhm.
doors, to try and bring some light into the space because it was trapped. And so we came up with the idea of doing the round window, and we had a custom glass piece blown that looks like the bottom of a old Coca-Cola bottle. It's that green color. And the client and I were talking about trying to use some hand dyed Italian papers, and she was going to Italy for the summer. And I said, why don't you just pick like 5 of your favorite papers and bring them back and just look at them and see what we can do. And so she brought back 5, and this one I loved. It was like this acidy green combo. It was just really great. And so I thought, why don't we just like old, you know, tea paper, wallpaper the walls in these sheets of paper. So I worked with the installer, and we literally like hand placed where each of these were going to be and where their joints were going to be and where they were going to overlap. And then what you see that is red is we took her family's Italian crest and had wax seals made with her family's crest on it and punctuated some of the sort of joints of where this paper overlays each other. So just off the wall, quirky, why not? Has a story and meaning and just kind of weird.
I love that. Question for you, because I have never seen that before. How does the wax hold over time?
It's been fine. I mean, 5 years, it's been fine.
Wow, that's amazing. Very
Yeah.
cool. We're back in New York City. Obviously, we're out of Atlanta.
Yep.
that
Yep.
view is
My
that view
bad.
is
No
no.
worries.
Well, you know what's interesting is I actually really like it, those two things juxtaposed against each other. And I was going to ask you about this because you've got that bathroom with the walls, and then we come to this image, and you've almost got something extraordinarily similar in the canopy over Central Park.
Yeah. This room, the inspiration for this room was actually, we were up there one day on a site visit and there was snow in the park. And I mean, I love seeing the green, but when that park is covered in snow, this room is like just sort of winter wonderland. So it has a silk grass combo wallpaper on it, just a lot of natural textures. It feels very sort of cocoonish, layered different fabrics and textiles, and a looseness to it, but still a fineness to it. But really the idea was to get that park view inside. And I mean, it's kind of hard to not have your eye go. I mean, you literally walk in the front door of this apartment, you don't even see anything. You go straight to the windows. I mean, it's spectacular. But in the winter, that view is just one with that bedroom, and it's really special.
Love it. Beautiful. Okay, so where are we now? Is this the Kiwa? Okay.
Yes.
I love this.
Down south.
Back down south. So okay, so this was covered in Lux magazine, and this was a collaboration with Robert A.M. Stern Architects, Roger Seifert. I just had Roger and the other three Beatles of architecture, and Robert A.M. Stern on the show.
I'm gonna call them that. I like it.
I love it. And
that's so good.
I love this. So do you remember your thought when you first saw this? What was the first idea or the first thought that came to your mind about how you were going to approach this?
Well, this house is actually, they have a new book out called Houses, and the house is on the cover of that book. This is the pool house wing of that house. So, and it's an addition. So when we first looked at the house, they had done this house about 20 years ago. And our client had just purchased it, but Ramza had designed the house 20 years ago. So they pulled Ramza in for the renovation and addition. And I mean, it's fantastic. It's beachfront. It's on 3 lots. It's truly an indoor-outdoor space. The client really wanted the ocean to come in and for the scheme to be a retreat and peaceful and serene. And so that's what we were aiming for. You've got one of those nano doors I was describing there behind those 2 central columns. It closes up, and that's an indoor loggia sort of TV room. And then it opens up and you've got, the connection to the pool and the ocean beyond. So it's pretty special. It's pretty great. And this is the living room of that house. The art, I wish I could remember the artist's name. It came out of Spalding Nick's gallery in Atlanta, but those are plaster topography. So when you get up close, they're about 3 inches deep, and they're topographical. He's done it off of topography. So there's a lot of texture in it. It's really neat. It reads a little flatter. in the image, but it's great. And then those glass sconces came from Australia, and we just love sort of popping that color in. But you can see a lot of natural materials again, not a lot of pattern, a lot of layered textures. It keeps things quiet, and it also allows the shape. When you don't have a lot of pattern, it allows the shape of your furniture to stand out more.
Speaking of shape, sorry, Erika, if you could go back for just 1 second. Speaking of shape, I just want to point out that light fixture, which you have this modern element and traditional idea blended into this space, yet it's not overpowering at all. It lets the rest of the design speak for itself.
Yeah, I think it's nice it sort of throws it off of the rocker a little bit. It keeps tradition, not dusty tradition. It keeps it fresh.
Yep, love it. I love, what's fun for me is, and I'm sure everyone else who's watching this, hopefully you guys are enjoying this as well, is when the new picture comes up, there's just that moment of silence where you just got to let it wash over you a little bit and take it all in. And again, constant themes. The artwork is ever present. It's not overpowering, and I feel like that is something that is definitely intentional for you in your process, especially as it relates. It's very textural, and not overpowering. It just sort of works with the rest of the room.
Our art too, I mean, I think you hit on something. We often bring a little bit more of a contemporary twist into our spaces because we deal with a lot of traditional classical architecture, which I love. But a way to sort of lighten that is through the art and the light fixtures in a more contemporary way. So you'll often see, those elements a little bit more contemporary in our spaces.
It's interesting as well. At Wake, you have a degree in studio art and art history from Wake Forest, and I can definitely tell. I feel strongly that art is a big part of your design. Is that because there is a certain level of confidence that you have because of your education in art and art history? Do you feel more comfortable working with it?
Yes and no. I mean, it's funny that you bring that up because I worked with a client, and we had an art consultant that was working with us, and it was fantastic. But we were looking at some very significant pieces, and the client, looks to me and she's like, what do you think? And I'm thinking, that's a house for somebody. Don't ask me. I'm not qualified to say that. I think what I do feel confident in is that I have a trained eye, and I've learned to trust my eye. And I like to say you have to know the rules to break the rules successfully. And so I think at this point in my career, I feel confident in that. And I didn't always. But I feel like I've seen enough and my eyes trained, and I know easily what will work. How do you push that envelope a little bit to make it interesting and unique? But when it comes to, significant, and I mean multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of a piece of art, I definitely want to, I don't feel comfortable saying, yeah, do that. It's a great investment. I can say, I think that's fantastic. And I know it will look great, but I like to bring a professional in when it comes to those pieces.
So as we're kind of running low on time here, Erika, sorry, would you go back for 1 quick second? What I'd like everyone to do is just sort of take that mental snapshot of these two images in your mind, right? Specifically the one on the right, and we can move on to the next one. But as we move on to the next one, Tammy, I want to know your opinion on accessorizing, because one of the things that I've noticed in all of your work, this image included, is you do a great deal of accessorizing in your spaces. I know how much edit goes into the work of great designers. At the same time, you're juxtaposing smalls with a, you know, an art collection in many cases, or in this, you know, in this last case, one piece that's really powerful, but then the smalls also kind of accentuate the whole room. And I'm curious if what your approach is to accessorizing, because I feel like accessorizing is an art form all by itself.
Absolutely. I mean, we take a layered approach, you know, especially when you have this house, while very large, it's more human scale than some of the projects we work on. But if you get a massive space, it really will just drink up the layers. And unless you have sort of that small mixed with large and smaller vignettes, then it's going to feel cold and sterile. So here you see, you know, throw blankets so you can curl up. A lot of the accessories are natural. I mean, look at all the sort of natural plants. Well, these are also plants that you would see. I think actually most of them we took from outside and brought them in, you know. So again, it reinforces that indoor outdoor connection. Books, I love books. I mean, you can look behind me. I mean, I love books. I mean, I put stacks of books on the floor in my house, but so yeah, I mean, it just makes it a little bit more personal and approachable, but we also are really careful not to overdo it. Depending on the space, you know, if it needs to feel more gallery-like, then I would say there would be fewer pieces, and then the ones that are in there feel more important, or the more formal space. When it's a more casual space, we tend to accessorize a little bit more like this.
Beautiful. Erika, perfect. So I feel like I am cognizant of everyone's time, and we're up against the hour. Before I go, I was hoping we'd get to the kitchen. I love kitchens, and especially in this house, I wanted to showcase it. Let's cover this one, and then we can wrap after this. If you just sort of walk us through this, it just looks so comfortable.
Yeah. So this kitchen is actually open to the room you just saw. So this is actually one large space. So it's great. This has become sort of the heart of the home, as so many kitchens do. We have a stone on the perimeter in that dark gray color. And then the center island is a French white oak. A lot of times we'll put oak on islands where you have bar stools, simply because, you know, if you're leaning up against it and your arms are on it, it's just, for me, a little bit more comfortable to not have a cold surface. Now, if it was a more formal house, it would be different. I would prefer stone. But and then we have a hand-done ceramic tile as the backsplash. That's a La Canache range with a custom hood with the dark gray enamel to match, and some Urban Electric pendant fixtures and Conrad blinds. And again, the color scheme is just really simple and quiet, because outside of those windows is the ocean. And that's really what you want, for me, to become the star of the show.
Love it. Beautifully done. Couple of things. First of all, Tammy, thank you very much for your time. Here's what I'd like to do, if possible. First of all, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. Thank you all so much for joining us today on the Showroom, Convo by Design, presented by Walker Zanger. Tammy Connor, your work, your time, so appreciative. Again, I just want to point out that if anyone wants to go listen to this again, we will be making a podcast episode of this so that you can listen again. We'll be putting the video on YouTube so you can watch it again. And if you'll indulge me for just 1 second, a really important question came in at the end from Gamut, who asked, and I just wanted to know if you could just spend the last couple of minutes we have just sort of addressing it. It's just so important. What advice do you have for aspiring designers? Thank you for the question, Gamut, and Tammy, if you could just sort of a little bit of insight.
Can I say run? I'm just kidding. No, I actually love I love what I do. I mean, there's days that I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of hand holding. I say we wear a lot of hats. Some days we're a cheerleader, we're a firefighter, we're a marriage counselor, and then designers in there somewhere. I would say, I think good design is a combo of a few things. One, educating yourself, getting, for me, I look backwards to look forward. So a historical perspective, and I wish I had more time because it's endless and there's a lot that I still don't know, but just educating yourself on what good design is, what good architecture is. I mean, landscape architecture. I mean, it all intertwines together. So definitely that. And then secondly is to follow sort of what your gut is and not what everybody else is doing, because you can look to them to inspiration, but what makes it different is just trusting your eye, educate yourself, get out, see as much as you can, get exposure to as much as you can, drink it up, and then trust your eye and don't follow. I mean, there's a lot of followers out there and you can sort of pick up on that. And it's one of the things I think I love so much about doing work all over the place is there's different vernaculars in different places, and I get to learn about that and then use what I know and merge that together. I would probably go crazy if I just did houses, in two neighborhoods, because then everybody wants their house to look like the next person's house. Well, that's really not what it's about. I mean, when they come to you because of how you put things together. I had Barry Dixon one time told me, because we were talking about, this was probably 5 to 10 years ago, how the value of a designer has changed. In the before, a lot of what a designer brought to the table was access to items. They had inside access to these things. Well, that's changed now because there's the internet and most people have access, and you'll even have clients that, question, you because they've done their own research. Well, so that's not what we're bringing to the table. Our real value at this point is how we combine things. And so what Barry said, he was like, you could go to 3 different plastic surgeons with the same training, but you're going to get a different face. And I thought, that is so good, or 3 different bakers with the same ingredients, but you're going to get a different cake. So, people are coming to you for what you have, and just trust in that and follow that passion and we've got enough followers around, so lead.
That is brilliant. And if I could say anything to that, I would just say resist the urge to be an influencer. Instead, be an original, like Tammy Connor. Tammy, thank you so much for this. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Walker Zanger. Erika, my partner in crime on this, thank you so much for everything. And thank you all for joining us. Much appreciated. Be well.